Have you ever, like, found a catchy slogan just stuck in your head, even if you don't really get what it's selling?
Oh, absolutely.
Or, wondered why some trend just explodes out of nowhere?
Yeah, those subtle things, right? Those unseen forces shaping our thoughts, our actions. Well, basically what social psychology studies.
Exactly. So today, we're kind of embarking on a journey into the heart of it, into social psychology.
We've looked through quite a bit, foundational studies, insightful lectures to give you a really accessible overview of the main theories.
Our mission really is to show how these ideas work in your daily life. Explain a bit about why we think and feel and act the way we do around other people.
It's like unlocking a kind of hidden code for our interactions. Social psychology, well, it's broad, covers our attitudes, persuasion, relationships.
Even things like bias and prejudice. We can't map it all today, obviously.
No, but we'll hit some key concepts, the fundamentals that offer some pretty surprising insights into our social world.
Okay, so maybe let's start with how we actually, make sense of everything socially, how we process it all.
Right. That brings us straight into social cognition. Basically, how we think about ourselves, other people, social situations. And a really foundational idea here is schemas.
Schemas.
Yeah.
Like mental blueprints.
Exactly, like blueprints or frameworks. We build them up over time to organize all the social knowledge we gather. When something new happens, our schemas help us, well, figure it out quickly, what to notice, what to expect.
How to react.
Precisely.
And these frameworks, they can have a huge impact, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes without us even noticing. Like, wasn't there that example about teacher expectations?
Yes, exactly. If a teacher, maybe unconsciously, expects certain students to do better, they might subtly give them more encouragement, maybe more challenging work. And then, well, those students often do perform better. It's like the expectation itself helps create the outcome, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow. So our schemas filter what we see, how we interpret it, even what we remember later.
They really do. Now, besides these big frameworks, we also use mental shortcuts, heuristics. They help us make judgments fast.
Heuristics.
Yeah.
Like mental rules of thumb.
Pretty much. They're usually efficient, but they can sometimes lead us astray, make us prone to errors.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, there's the availability heuristic. We judge how likely something is based on how easily examples pop into our minds.
Ah.
So if you've seen tons of news about, say, plane crashes recently,
Right.
you might overestimate the actual risk of flying, even if statistically it's very safe. Those vivid news stories are just really available in your memory.
I get it. Dramatic stuff sticks, so we think it's more common than it really is. What's another one?
Another key one is the representativeness heuristic. This is where we sort of classify something based on how well it matches a typical case, a stereotype, really. We often ignore the actual odds.
Okay.
Think about this. You meet someone, they're artistic, love poetry, dress kind of unconventionally. Are they more likely a librarian or a slam poet?
Probably slam poet. Based on the description?
Most people would say that. Because those traits seem representative of that stereotype. But statistically, there are probably way more librarians than slam poets out there.
Ah, so we focus on the description matching the category and forget about how common each category actually is in the first place, the base rate.
Exactly. You got it. We let the vivid details overshadow the probabilities. Okay, so that's a bit about how we take in information. What about how we explain why people do things, ourselves included?
Right, figuring out the causes behind actions. Attribution theory.
That's the one. Attribution theory looks at how we explain behavior. Generally, we point to either internal factors like personality, effort, ability.
Or external factors.
Yes, like the situation, luck, pressure from others.
I do this all the time. If my colleague messes up a presentation, I might think, they're just not prepared.
Yeah.
Internal. But if I mess up, oh, the projector wasn't working right. External.
That is a perfect example of a really common bias, the fundamental attribution error. When we explain other people's behavior, we tend to overestimate the role of their personality, their internal traits.
And underestimate the situation.
Exactly. We underestimate situational factors. You see someone yelling at a cashier, you might think, wow, what a rude person. But maybe they just received terrible news. Or the cashier made a huge error, situational stuff we don't see.
So we're quick to judge them, not their circumstances.
Pretty much. Especially when we only see them in one context. And related to this, there's the self-serving bias.
Ah, let me guess. This is about making ourselves look good.
You nailed it. We tend to take credit for our successes. I got an A because I studied hard internal
All
attribution.
right.
But we blame failures on external factors. The professor gave me a C, the test was unfair. External attribution, it helps protect our self-esteem.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about how we think and explain behavior. What about attitudes? How do they connect to what we actually do?
Right? Attitudes. These are essentially our evaluations, our feelings often rooted in our beliefs that incline us to respond in a certain way towards, well, anything. People, objects, ideas.
And they have components, right? Like feelings, actions, thoughts.
Exactly. Affects the emotional part. Behavior, how we act or intend to act. And cognition, our thoughts and beliefs about it.
So my attitude towards recycling involves feeling good about doing it, affect, actually putting things in the blue bin behavior, and believing it helps the environment, cognition.
Perfect example. Now, what's really interesting and maybe counterintuitive is that it's not just attitudes influencing behavior. Our behavior can actually shape our attitudes.
How does that work?
Well, a major theory here is cognitive dissonance.
Ah, yes, I've heard of this. That uncomfortable feeling when our actions don't match our beliefs. Or when we hold two conflicting ideas.
Exactly. It creates this inner tension, this dissonance, and we're motivated to reduce it. Often the easiest way is to change our attitude so it aligns better with what we've done.
So if I do something that goes against my beliefs, I might actually start changing my belief to justify the action.
Precisely. There was that classic study where people did a really boring task. Then they were paid either a tiny amount or a larger amount to tell the next person the task was actually fun.
Okay.
The ones paid only a little bit actually ended up rating the task as more enjoyable afterwards. Why? Because the small payment wasn't enough justification for lying. So to reduce the dissonance of, I'm an honest person, but I just lied for almost nothing, they changed their attitude. Actually, maybe that task wasn't so bad after all.
Wow. So our minds try to create consistency. If I acted that way, there must be a good reason. I must believe it.
It's a powerful drive. There's also another related idea, self-perception theory.
How's that different?
Self-perception theories suggest that when our attitudes are weak or ambiguous, we figure them out by looking at our own behavior, kind of like an outside observer.
So I notice I spend a lot of time reading about environmental issues. Therefore, I must really care about the environment.
Sort of, yes. It's inferring attitude from behavior. And this can lead to something called the overjustification effect.
Overjustification.
Yeah, this happens when you start rewarding someone externally for something they already intrinsically enjoy doing.
Like paying a kid for getting good grades when they already like learning.
Exactly. Or paying a musician who loves playing just for fun. The external reward can actually undermine the internal motivation. They might start thinking, I'm only doing this for the money now, and their genuine enjoyment can decrease.
Huh. That's fascinating. External rewards aren't always good then. Okay, so we've got thoughts, attitudes, internal stuff. What about how other people influence us, social influence?
Yes, a huge area. We're constantly being influenced, often without realizing it. One really basic form is conformity.
Just going along with the group, adjusting our behavior or thinking to match some group standard.
That's it. And there are generally two main reasons why we conform. First, informational social influence. This happens when we're unsure about something, maybe the situation is ambiguous, and we look to others because we assume they have better information. We conform because we want to be right.
Like if you're in a foreign country and you watch how locals behave to figure out the customs.
Perfect example. You assume they know what they're doing. The other type is normative social influence.
And that's about fitting in, being liked.
Exactly. We conform to gain social approval or avoid rejection. We want to be accepted by the group.
Makes sense. Now, sometimes it's not just blending in, but someone actually asks us to do something. That's compliance, right?
Yes, compliance is agreeing to a direct request. And there are various techniques people use, consciously or not, to increase compliance.
Like what?
Well, one powerful one relies on the norm of reciprocity.
The idea that we should return favors.
Precisely. It's a very strong social norm. If someone does something nice for you, you feel indebted, obligated to do something for them in return. Think about charity sending you free address labels in the mail.
Yeah. You feel a little more obligated to donate.
It taps into that reciprocity norm. Or servers giving a mint with the bill, it often increases tips.
Clever. What else?
There's the foot in the door technique. You start with a small, easy request that someone is likely to agree to.
Okay.
Then you follow up with a larger related request. Because they already said yes once and perhaps see themselves as helpful, they're more likely to agree to the bigger request too.
I can see that. And the opposite, door in the face.
Right. You start with a huge, unreasonable request that you know will be rejected.
Slam the door in your face.
Metaphorically, yes. Then you immediately follow up with a much smaller, more reasonable request, the one you actually wanted all along. The contrast makes the second request seem much more manageable, and the person might feel like they should compromise since you backed down from your initial big ask.
These are definitely psychological tactics.
Yeah.
Now, what if the request is actually a command from someone in charge? Obedience.
Yes, obedience is complying with an explicit command, usually from an authority figure. And the classic, if controversial, studies here are Milgram's experiments.
The shock experiments.
Yeah. They showed how far people would go in obeying an authority figure, even when instructed to do something that seemed morally wrong, administering what they thought were painful electric shocks.
That's quite disturbing, really. Shows the power of authority.
It really does. Though it's worth noting, variations showed obedience decreased somewhat when the study was moved from a prestigious university setting to a more ordinary office building. So the perceived legitimacy of the authority matters.
Interesting nuance.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about relationships, connecting with others.
The fundamental human need. The need to belong is incredibly powerful. Research consistently shows that strong social connections are vital for our well-being, even our physical health. Lack of connection is linked to higher mortality rates.
Wow. So what draws us together? What predicts attraction?
Several factors. Proximity is a big one. Just being physically near someone increases the chance of forming a relationship. We tend to like people we see often.
Makes sense. Familiarity.
Then there's physical attractiveness, which certainly plays a role, especially initially. And similarity, we tend to be attracted to people who are similar to us in attitudes, values, background, interests. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. Or maybe more accurately, dissimilarity breeds dislike.
We like people who are like us.
Yeah.
Seems straightforward. What about different kinds of love? It's not all the same feeling, is it?
No, definitely not. Psychologists often distinguish different types. There's passionate love, that intense, often overwhelming feeling of longing and arousal. Very common early in romantic relationships.
The honeymoon phase.
Kinda, yeah. Then there's companionate love. This is more about deep affection, trust, intimacy, caring for the other person. It's the bedrock of many long-term friendships and successful, lasting marriages, maybe after the initial intense passion fades a bit.
A deeper, steadier connection.
Exactly. And some models, like Sternberg's, talk about consummate love as the ideal, combining intimacy, passion, and commitment. All three components.
Okay, so that covers how we form bonds. But what about helping? When do we step in to help someone in need? Or when don't we?
Right. Pro-social behavior. And one of the most studied phenomena here is the bystander effect.
Ah, the idea that the more people are around, the less likely any one person is to help.
Exactly. It seems counterintuitive, but that's what research generally shows. The classic example, though the details are sometimes debated, is the Kitty Genovese case, where many people supposedly heard her cries for help, but few intervened quickly.
Why does that happen? Why do more people mean less help?
A key reason is diffusion of responsibility. When others are present, the responsibility to act is spread out. Everyone might think, someone else will surely call for help, or it's not really my place.
So no one feels personally responsible enough to act.
That's a big part of it. Of course, other factors increase helping. Things like feeling empathy for the victim, being in a good mood, the feel-good, do-good effect. Even feeling guilty about something unrelated can make us more likely to help someone else.
Guilt.
Yeah, wanting to relieve that guilt can motivate pro-social action.
Interesting. So our internal state matters a lot. Okay, one last big area to touch on, and it's a difficult one. Prejudice and discrimination.
Yes. Let's clarify terms first. Prejudice is a negative attitude or prejudgment toward a group. Stereotypes are the beliefs or generalizations we hold about group members, often inaccurate, even if seemingly positive sometimes. And discrimination is the negative behavior directed towards people based on their group membership.
Attitude, belief, behavior. Got it. And where does this come from?
There are many sources, but one factor is explained by social identity theory. We tend to categorize ourselves and others into groups, our in-groups and out-groups, them. And we often favor our own group, which can sometimes fuel bias against other groups.
And this isn't always conscious, right? Implicit bias.
Exactly. Implicit biases are those automatic, unconscious attitudes or stereotypes that can still influence our judgments and actions, even if we consciously reject prejudice. Tools like the implicit association test try to measure these.
And these unconscious biases can have real effects.
Research suggests they can correlate with discriminatory outcomes on a larger scale, even if predicting individual behavior is complex. They can subtly affect things from who gets called back for an interview to how medical treatment is administered.
That's quite sobering. What about stereotype threat?
Stereotype threat is a fascinating and important concept. It's the risk people feel of confirming a negative stereotype about their own group.
How does that work?
Well, say there's a negative stereotype that Group X isn't good at math. If a member of Group X is reminded of this stereotype right before taking a math test, the anxiety and pressure of not wanting to confirm that stereotype can actually interfere with their performance, potentially making them do worse than they otherwise would.
So the fear of confirming the stereotype becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in itself.
It can, yes.
Yeah.
It's a really challenging situational pressure.
Wow. Okay, we've really covered a lot of ground today. Social cognition, attitudes, influence, relationships, helping, bias. It's a lot.
It really is. But I think the big takeaway, the core message, is that social psychology gives us these incredibly useful tools, these frameworks for understanding all those invisible forces that shape so much of our everyday lives.
Yeah, forces we often don't even notice, from tiny judgments to our biggest relationships.
Exactly. They're always operating.
And it's not just, interesting academic stuff. Understanding these ideas actually has practical value, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Being aware of these principles, things like the fundamental attribution error or cognitive dissonance or conformity pressures, can help you understand yourself better.
Navigate social situations maybe more effectively.
Definitely. And maybe be a bit more critical, a bit more thoughtful about the social information you encounter, the influences around you. Knowing about the availability heuristic, for example, might make you pause and seek out more data before jumping to a conclusion based on vivid anecdotes.
Right. Or recognizing reciprocity might make you aware of when you're being subtly influenced.
Precisely.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to take away and mull over.
Yeah.
Think about some social interaction you had recently. Could be anything, a conversation, a disagreement, watching people on the street. And just reflect. Could any of these ideas we talked about today, attribution, conformity, schemas, whatever,
Right.
could one of them help explain what was going on there?
That's a great exercise. It really brings the theories to life when you start seeing them play out in your own experience. Makes you realize just how social we truly are.